Hey there and welcome to a new video. In today's video, we will solve a pretty complex SQL interview question. First, let us go through the question, then we will go through the sample table which I have created along with the expected output. So here is the question. So we are given a task to write a query to calculate the balance for each account on a daily basis, consolidating multiple transactions on the same day for same account. And there are specific conditions which are given here, that is, assume the balance start at $0 and that credit add to the balance and debit subtract from the balance. So when we go through the table, all these conditions will be pretty much clear. And there is one additional challenge, that is, return the result in specific given format, and that format we will see within the expected output. And here is the table which I have created, which is the bank transaction table. Let me execute this and let us see the schema. So here is the table which has got transaction ID, and this is the account ID corresponding to each transaction. This is the transaction date. This is the amount which has undergone some transaction, and this is the transaction type, whether it is credit or whether it is debit. And here it is given that whenever it is credit, it is adding to the balance, and whenever it is debit, it is subtracting from the balance. So that is another condition which is given within the question. Now let us go through the question once again. That is, we have to write a query to calculate the balance for each account on a daily basis. Now consolidating multiple transactions on the same day for same account. Now let us go and see what is the expected output. So here is the expected output that we are trying to obtain, and in a specific format. And this is the exact same table which we now saw in SSMS. The same table that we created. And the DDL and DML to create the table will be provided in description. So you can directly copy the same and create the table in your system. Now when we go through the expected output, we can see that we only have transaction date, and we can see that all the account ID has been pivoted. So here we have account ID, and here we have transaction date, and here we have the account balance with respect to that particular transaction date and transaction account ID. So this is the specific output format which we have to obtain from the input that is given. Now let us go back to SSMS and see how we can obtain the required output. So we will start with a select clause on the bank transaction table, and we are going to take all the columns from the bank transaction table, and now we are going to create an additional column which is based on the amount column and transaction type column. Case when transaction type equal to credit, then it means that that particular transaction is adding some amount to the account ID. So then we can write then amount, and we will write another condition where when the same condition, that is transaction type equal debit, then basically it is subtracting some amount from the particular account, then minus amount. So that is the condition, and we will write an else condition, else null, and end the case statement as account amount. So this will be the new column that we are going to create based on the transaction type column and the amount column. Execute this and we will get an additional column. So this column now we can make use of instead of the amount column. So going forward, we won't be using the amount column. Instead, we will use the account amount column. And this transformation is based on the condition which was given in the question, that is, assume the balance start at $0 and that credit add to the balance and debit subtract from the balance. Now this query we will place inside a CTE with T1 as, we will give the CTE name as T1, open and close parenthesis, and now we are going to calculate the total amount with respect to each account ID and each transaction date. For that, select account ID, comma, transaction date, comma, and sum of account underscore amount as account balance. So this will give the account balance or the amount of transaction that has happened for a particular account ID and particular transaction date. And this is taken from the CTE T1, from T1. And we will write a group by clause also. Group by the column account ID and transaction date. Copy this, paste it here, execute. And now we will get account ID, transaction date, and account balance with respect to each account ID, transaction date combination. Now this query also we will place inside a second CTE, that is T2S, open and close parenthesis. And now based on the account balance that we have created, or the new column account balance we created, we will calculate a running sum for each account ID transaction date. For that, we will write another query, that is select account underscore ID, comma, transaction date, comma, sum of account balance, close parenthesis. And now we are going to write the overclose, and within overclose we will write the partition and order by close. Partition by account underscore ID, and order by will be based on the transaction date. Order by transaction date, which will be in ascending order, close parenthesis. And this column we will name as running account balance, running account balance, and this is taken from T2. And now before executing the query, one thing we have to make sure, that is here it is not account underscore ID, it is account ID. Here also we have to make the change, otherwise we will get some error. Now execute this and we will get account ID, transaction date and running account balance with respect to each account ID and transaction date. Now the final step that we have to do is we have to pivot the account ID for each transaction date. For that we are going to make use of the pivot function in SQL. So this query also we will paste inside another CTE, that is T3S, open and close parenthesis. And now we will write the base query, that is select account ID, comma, the second column will be transaction date, and third column will be running account balance, ACC BALANCE, and this will be taken from the CTE T3, and we will place this query inside a parenthesis, because for the pivot function to work properly we need a base query, and this will be our base query as base table. Now on this base table we have to write the further query using pivot function. So now we will write the pivot function, that is pivot, open close parenthesis. And now here we have to write an aggregate function. So here I am going to use the sum aggregate function, open and close parenthesis, and here it will be running account balance, because we need to aggregate the running account balance for each account ID and transaction date. ACC balance for account ID in open and close parenthesis. And now we have to specify the different values of account ID from the table. So when we go through the table, we can see that we have 4 different account ID, 401, 402, 403 and 404. So we will have to specify the account ID within the parenthesis and also within a square bracket. First one will be 401, second one will be 402, third value will be 403, and the final value will be 404. And these are the 4 values which is currently available for the account ID. And now we will give an alias name to this pivot function which we wrote, that will be pivot result. Now we will have to write a select star from the following transformation based on the pivot function. Now execute and we should be getting the result. Execute and we have a result which is similar to what we saw in the expected output. So we can copy the result and see if we have obtained the same output. Copy this along with header. Let us go back to the expected output and let us compare the expected output with what we have obtained. So here we have the transaction ID starting from 1 until 6th for the month of 11, and here we have 401, 402, 403 and 404, and all the values seems to be matching, that is corresponding to transaction date 1/11/2024 and account ID 401 we have 500, and coming down we have 300, 600, 500, which is matching with the result that we expected. Similarly, when we go through the account ID 402, the first amount will be minus 300. Here also we have minus 300. Similarly, the second will be null, minus 400, 100, null, and finally we have minus 100, and that is also matching. Also, when we take a quick glance, we can see that the value corresponding to transaction dates and account ID 403 and 404 is also matching with what we have obtained in the query. And this is how we can obtain the account balance with respect to each transaction date and account ID. And the same thing can be done on a monthly basis, yearly basis, and on different time frame you can use the same method and obtain the result. And also this is one of the very common but bit tricky question that is asked during SQL interview, especially during data analyst SQL interviews. Hope you like this video. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more. Thank you.